Hey guys, what's up? This is Stock Retail coming back to you. Boy, I'm excited to talk a little more about Q3. I know I've been on that topic the last couple of videos, but as we round into the last month of the quarter and I see what's coming, and frankly, things have gotten even more bullish since the last time I talked to you, I want to just hit it again. Today I'll stay a lot higher level than other forecast discussions, but what I want to just hit is why you can even see the title here. It is Q3 even record earnings, and let's hone in and talk about what I mean on that here in a minute. I'll hit a couple miscellaneous topics too, but mostly just going to cover like how can I be as bullish as I am, because I've had a few. I don't know. The last few weeks, I've been getting trolled and attacked a little more. Something's going on out there. The last couple days, if you're on Twitter, certainly I stepped into things intentionally, and that stirs up more attacks when you do that. So some of that is my own, doing, I suppose. But before that too, I was getting attacked a lot more and started to see some patterns and wondered what the heck is going on. So I'm going to touch a couple of different topics today. But part of the attacks for a little while, when it was a little more tame, was just kind of people, just what the shorts do, like questioning the profit levels, trying to point eyes back towards Q2 and Q1, which were the strike impacted quarters. I saw that definitely when Adam posted. There were some trolls on that too. So, gonna just cover what's going on and give you a little insight into where the forecast is coming from. And as always, no trust me bros here. I give you that so that you can then decide, agree, disagree. What do you think? One of the things, though, another topic I want to cover real quick. I've been getting asked quite a few times. I would say about 50-50. About half I can tell are just well-meaning apes that are curious, like, hey, what would you do with this cash? Let's say AMC turns into a cash positive, cash generating company, things like positive free cash flows, cash flows from operations. These are a few metrics you'll see. And so people ask me, all right, so if you think AMC is so profitable now, what would you do with the cash? And like I said, about 50% are probably well-meaning apes, and about 50 I can kind of tell from patterns of behavior, from following lists, from ways that people approach me, that they're trying to set me up into a trap. And what they're trying to get at is the thing that you've seen a little bit of people getting sort of trying to be bullying about Adam and dividends and all that stuff. So I'm just going to go ahead and tell you what I would do with the cash. But before I even do this, I want to make it really, really clear. There is a lot of information I don't have. And so all the armchair quarterbacks all over Twitter and YouTube and anywhere else, you all know my point of view by now. I have shown you through the financials, through quantifiable, objective, just numbers-based information that this management team has done a fantastic job with this company. And so that to me should already be tell you the point of view I come in with, which is this management team knows what's going on and they don't need me or anybody else second guessing them. So that's not what I'm here to do. And what I would say is if I tell you what I would do with the cash, there's a reason I'm even wording it that way. This is me sitting here on a chair in my home. There is a lot of information, analysis, future plans, and just even deeper level accounting and finance and strategy that I don't have line of sight to. So let me just say super clearly that I do not in any way, shape, or form mean to say this is the right answer. And if the management team doesn't do these things, they have my full support because they know things I don't know. And their track record speaks for itself. I am super bullish on this management team, and you guys know that. I trust them. Okay, but here's what I would do. So first off, I would establish a baseline balance. Basically, there's a level of cash I never want to go under. Adam has made it really clear in earnings calls, in various online communications, that when he says cash is king, and he says, hey, we have survived because we kept hyper focused on our cash levels. And he's right. The reason that you and I as shareholders have not suffered through the damages of bankruptcy, which basically wipe out shareholders and benefit bondholders, the reason we have not suffered through that is because he has made sure that AMC has always been solvent, always been able to pay the bills, which means they have had cash. So the first thing I would do, even though I'm very bullish on where movies are, the recovery of this industry, the fact that now we've got popcorn and candy and distribution, so things are looking very, very bright for these next, 2.5+ years, maybe forever. Who knows? Let's start to see what's out in 2027 at some point. Um, so things are very bright, but he is coming out of, and his management team is coming out of a time of unpredictability, volatility, you know, worldwide chaos. And so it would be natural to say, even though we believe in the movie slate that's coming, we're going to have some level of prudence, that we're going to hold a certain amount of cash no matter what. So that'd be the first thing. I would just expect Adam and team, and I'm in this way, I'm sort of almost, I don't know, just predicting that even in a better situation for a while, they're going to hold a certain level of cash because they're just going to say, let's have a sort of abundance of caution until we're really out of the woods. And I respect that. They've gotten us this far. They're going to continue to keep us safe, and I can completely respect that. Which is why I'll never put pressure on them to do anything with cash because I'm trusting them to keep us safe. So whatever they decide, I'm good with that. Now, let's say you start having excess cash above that balance that you're saying I never want to go under. I would take a big portion of it. I have just made up a percent here, guys. This is not any kind of scientific or deeply thought out number. This was just me kind of making up. So just think of this as an idea or a direction. I would take some majority, at least half, maybe more, of my excess cash from quarter to quarter. And I would have a forecast too, right? That says, well, maybe next quarter I'm back to a burn. Like, in Q1, sometimes we have lower quarters, things like that. But if I believed I had excess cash for a good period of time, I would just take that straight to debt payment and I would just pay down the principal on the debt. That I've told you before in other, and I've got an asterisk here, so I'm going to talk more about it, but it saves you money on interest payments, so it's adding to your future earnings. It's actually going to increase and accelerate your cash flows in the future, basically. I would actually start to have Bitcoin as a reserve currency. That's just me. I can completely respect if Adam and team don't agree and they don't go that route. We're seeing more and more companies and governments adopt Bitcoin as a reserve currency. I believe there is strategic, capital, financial value to, I don't know, you guys know how bullish I am on Bitcoin. So basically, I would just start to have, I would nibble at Bitcoin as a reserve currency. So you can see I'm saying, maybe you take a quarter of your excess cash and you put it there. If we didn't have so much debt, I would say even more personally, but I can understand and frankly applaud that we are going to pay down debt and accelerate how much money we get to keep in-house and not burn that on interest payments. So I just have some amount I'd be putting towards Bitcoin. And stronger companies, maybe you've seen like Semler Scientific is one example. Like they have nothing to do with Bitcoin in their business model. I think they're like a medical devices company, and they've started to buy piles and piles and piles of Bitcoin. So there are companies who are adopting it almost as part of the business strategy, even though that's not their business. Well, AMC, again, is coming out of a volatile period, so perhaps not at a place where you can, over-allocate funds to that. And so that's why I've got it as some percent. But that would be a part of what I would do. And then, reminder that, Adam and team have said there's going to be things like maybe there's a theater that needs to replace the seating. It needs modernization. Maybe there's these laser projectors we're putting in places. Might be whole new construction. There might be an extension of, we're going to have more IMAX screens or Dolby screens. He's talked about investing in that. So there's going to be strategic investments. Expanding candy distribution. Well, that would take money. There'll be investments the team decides to make. So that's called capital expenditures, when you're investing in longer term payout items. And so I'm just saying I'd take something like 20% of my excess cash, again, only of the excess, and start investing for my future. I don't know what their normal rate is for how much they would put towards CapEx. So this could be way off. I'm not saying this is based on DD. I've been asked, what would you do with the cash? Now, I haven't talked yet about dividends or stock buybacks. So let's talk a little bit about some things. first off, on the debt pay down, I told you that would snowball, so I've talked about that in other videos. If you pay down debt, you're burning less cash on interest. Now you have even more improved cash flows the next quarter, and then you just keep doing that. It's kind of if you've heard of Dave Ramsey, it's something like that, where you pay down your debt and you have even more cash. Now you have more cash to pay down more debt, and it just goes faster and faster. By the way, on that 2029 debt, you guys know that we moved the 2026 out to 2029. I'm starting to have the point of view that I think the business will be strong enough that we could probably pay that debt off by 2029 with just proceeds from the business. But you can see I'm not saying let's put everything towards that. So perhaps Adam has a decision to make too. Is he more trying to just hurry up and pay all that off, or does he feel that he can allocate money elsewhere? So that's the first thing. Just know that any amount that pays down debt is reducing our interest payments and therefore adding to the bottom line in future quarters. And then I would have some target. This is the second bullet at the bottom here. I would have some target where I say, all right, I want to get my debt to X level. And then, and only then, would I start being willing to consider dividends and stock buybacks. I'm just telling you, if I was in any company, in authority and leadership in any company, this is how I would be thinking. You're just getting retail's point of view. That's it. And it's okay if you disagree. But, I got asked dozens of times on Twitter this question. So here's my answer. So what you're hearing is I'm not saying right away we should do a dividend or a stock buyback. But, third bullet, you see the big all caps unless. And this is why people ask. I know this is why well-meaning apes ask about it. If I believed that we have far more shares shorted than should exist, and by the way, I do believe that, and if I felt comfortable, that's the key, that my company was safe and I could allocate some cash to dividends and stock buybacks, which would put, let's say, a lot of pressure on shorts because they're going to have to cover the dividends on any naked shorts. If you have a share in your account, that share is getting the dividend. But AMC is only going to send out enough money to cover dividends on the actual approved amount of shares, the float. So if there were any naked shorts, somehow your broker or a short or somebody, and they're all, I'll see people start to point fingers at each other. In theory, they're going to have to cover that dividend, and that is a cost out of their pocket. That is why people are very, very interested in dividends, to protect a company against abusive shorting. And so I think that is a valid, and I think it is an ethical and a morally right defense mechanism. I have no problem with it. And we all would love dividends, right? I would take my dividend and buy more shares. I'd just turn right back around. But I just want to be really, really, really clear that anyone who's ever, pushing Adam and team, being aggressive about it, trying to paint him in a negative light about kind of win dividends and all that stuff, I'm just always going to be against that. I cannot say enough. He has managed us well through the worst storm almost any company could have ever faced. This is a once in many generations disaster he has managed through, and he's done it well, and we have not gone bankrupt. And so until he decides it's time for dividends, I'm just going to trust. But I am admitting to you that if I had the opportunity, if I had the excess cash, if it didn't damage my relationship with my lenders and damage other relationships, then yes, I would consider, even if it was a one-time event, perhaps some piece of dividend. And why, by the way, why I'm saying stock buybacks, that then shrinks the float, tightens things on the shorts, and it naturally drives share price upward. By the way, that's something you should learn about in the broader stock market. If you look at companies like Apple, Nike, perhaps Nvidia, others, look at how much stock buybacks they're doing. That's not actual business growth. That's in lieu of a dividend, and they're basically buying their own stock to keep maintaining the price of a stock. You want to be real educated about that if you're buying stocks, because there will be times where some companies aren't really growing, but they're propping their stock price up through stock buybacks. it can benefit you as a shareholder, but you want to understand where is stock valuation coming from. But that's another video for another day. So this is all what I would do with cash. Top line, basically, have an amount you always keep, allocate excess cash to, for me, debt pay down, Bitcoin, and capital expenditures, and then consider whether I would start dividends, if and only if my company was genuinely healthy. So that's what I would do. That answers your question, I hope, and I hope it's really, really clear that I have the humility to say I don't know better than this management team. They know better than I do, and they will decide, and I trust them because they've got a track record of managing us well. All right, let's turn to the box office and to the forecasts. So I have got us now, in the past, I think I've told you, I think I've said like 2.4 to 2.7 this whole quarter. We're still in that same zone, although you can see we're getting to the very top of my range. And that is mainly because, a couple things. So first off, you can see I just pulled this, I don't know, an hour ago. So if it's updated since I pulled it, we didn't have today's numbers yet. Perhaps that's updated, but we are at a little over 2.1 for the quarter so far through just a couple days of September. I know this says through the 5th here, but it's actually really through the 4th. We don't have new numbers in today's yet. This is from Box Office Mojo, by the way, this screen I'm looking at. I use this and I use the numbers.com. It's actually like, I think, the-numbers.com to get the daily numbers. I use both of those. They're pretty good sites for that. And on the right, you can see Box Office Pro. They have nice forecasts and updates on movies. So sometimes people ask me what websites I use. Those are 3 in particular that I use a lot. Box Office Pro, Box Office Mojo, and the-numbers.com. Good sites for movie information. Anyway, so we're at like 2.1 billion as of today, really as of yesterday. You can see that's a bit behind last year, same time. That was at 229. You can see I just brought in 2019 and 2018, sort of pre-COVID. You can see we're at 2.2, basically. We're kind of right in the zone, right? Like we're tracking back to this being a great quarter, which has been fantastic. If you've been on Twitter, you've seen me celebrating that. And kind of good-naturedly, there's some apes who think my forecast is too low. They think this 269 is too low. I think it'll be great if they're right. I'd love to beat this number. That means more profits. The only time I ever get a little feisty is when people come to me really disrespectfully and just tell me how, what a moron you are and whatever. And I'm like, all right, I don't think you and I are going to be real close to each other. But the apes who are kind of friendly and just having fun with it, I see you guys, and I see some people think this is too low. So I just want to acknowledge that there are apes who think we may even beat this number. The reason my number's been coming up lately, just like look at Beetlejuice. Geez. If you go back, you could track, I said this is a good website, this Box Office Pro. There's others like Deadline and Variety. There's just a lot of, Screen Rant is another one, who will put out opening weekend projections for movies. And I can tell you right now, Beetlejuice started at like, say, 50 to 60 million, people were saying. Now, I always knew that was too low, so I always had a much higher number than that. I think at one point, to begin the quarter, I think I had said like 90 for opening weekend. And then, these websites have crept from 60, they went to 80, they went to 90, they went to 100. Now you can see just yesterday, Box Office Pro had said, hey, opening weekend's more like 115 to 145. And I can also tell you for these guys, that's a pretty big range. So that's them saying, this thing is exploding and we don't even know yet just how big it's going to be. So I love it. If you are at all interested, get out there, support AMC, go to this movie this weekend, buy popcorn, buy candy, if it fits your budget. I'm very conscious that some don't have the budget. That's okay. Let others pick that up for you. But if you can go, I think this is exciting. I saw the original Beetlejuice in a drive-through theater. It's literally the only drive-through I ever went to, was a double feature of Batman and Beetlejuice. So it was 2 Michael Keaton movies. And I was, I guess I'm aging myself a little, but I was a young kid and saw those. So good memories for me. I'm going to go see it. Encourage you to do the same. But that's part of what's lifting my forecast, is Beetlejuice is just climbing. So let's talk about a little bit. I'm going to go through, let's focus on the left here for a minute. So I'm saying Q3 profits, basically if you look, so if I've got this 269, well, last year was 265 at the box office. So you might say like, hey, the box office is the same year over year. That's what I'm saying here on the left. So how come you're saying we have these huge profits? And I've gotten asked that a lot too. So last year, just so you know, same quarter on that 265 billion domestic box office. That's not the global box office. That's just kind of like U.S. and Canada. On the 265 domestic box office, AMC had profits, bottom line profits of $12 million. And if you followed me on X, you might have seen me post like we might even hit 9-digit profits, 100 million plus. And so you should be saying actually, how can you have almost the same box office year over year, and you're telling me we went from like 12 million profits to 100? So I'm going to walk you through this so that you know our business model, so that you are FUD proof. All right. So first of all, in this quarter last year, if you were to look, so go back to my last video where I showed you a lot of charts over time. Gave you a lot of DD on the company that it should be easy to share with friends and stuff too, where you can just show, like I said, quantifiable, objective facts about this business on what's going on. Well, what you would see in the ticket prices, like the ticket spending per person, and what you would see in the food and beverage spending per person, so these first two bullets, this quarter last year had a big dip. It was kind of a one-off where we were tracking, like say, ticket prices have been well over 11 for a long time. Last quarter, I think, was around 11.30. I'd have to go back and look at that on the average per person for the whole globe for us. Well, this quarter last year was only 10.80. So if we've had like, I don't know, let's say 7 of the last 8 quarters well over 11, but that one quarter was below 11 at 10.80, then I'm saying, well, actually, I don't think that's going to happen again. I think this quarter, our ticket prices are back up over 11 as they were last quarter. So yeah, I'm not saying something that didn't just happen. And so that's a big change in AMC's admissions. If the box office is about the same, but if AMC is getting more per person than last year, you can see I've got us, it's basically like $48 million gain in admissions last year versus this year on almost the same box office. So that's a large part of where this bigger number is coming from. And same thing on the food and beverage spending per person. I've got about a 60 million gain year over year, because last year at this time, we had this big dip. Now, remember, at the beginning of the quarter last year, I believe, I could be wrong here, guys, I'm going off memory, I believe there was kind of a promotional week where there were like really, really low ticket prices to just get people in the doors. It's before Barbenheimer. There was kind of a moment where I think theaters weren't sure it was going to be such a good quarter before Barbenheimer just went nuts. And so there was like a discount week that brought in a different consumer, basically. A very discount consumer who wasn't paying as much for tickets and wasn't spending as much on food and beverage. And, that's great. Sometimes you run promotions and you bring in traffic. And then hopefully some of those people are sticky and return. I totally get that. But I'm just telling you why last year was a bit different, and why you're welcome to disagree, but why logically I'm saying, nah, the trend lately on food and beverage per person and the trend lately on ticket price per person is far higher than it was this same quarter last year. And so I've got assumptions in my forecast, you can see, that bring in a lot of money. Then what else? All right, so popcorn was practically non-existent this quarter last year. We had barely ramped up. I think we were only in Walmart at this time. I'd have to go back and look. But we were not yet like in Amazon and Publix, Kroger, and a lot of other brands. So that is a significant change year over year. We did not have the candy yet. We had no distribution yet. So this Usher concert that's about to happen, that would have been a big fat zero last year. So, even if Usher is obviously, I think it's not disrespectful to say that's not going to be as big as Taylor, but it's not nothing, right? And so none of that basically existed in this quarter last year. So I'm looking at net, and now you may say, retail, I think your number's way too low. I'm adding kind of the impact of popcorn, candy, and Usher last year compared to this year of a $7 million gain at the bottom line. So note this parentheses where I'm saying net. I have a number. Guys, I have to take a wild guess on popcorn and candy. We don't have those numbers. They don't publish them. And as well, I take a wild guess at what our real profits are and how big the Usher movie will be. And I'm hoping that I've got that smaller than it's actually going to be, but let's see. But so bottom line, I take out some expenses. I also, forecast what the expenses are, not just the revenues. So I've got us $7 million net over last year. I'd hope that maybe that's actually too small. We'll find out. Rent is quantifiable. It's documented. I can track quarter to quarter what our rent is, and so I've got us $6 million lower than last year. So that's a reduced expense, which goes to your bottom line. Depreciation and amortization, I've talked to you guys a little bit about that. That's a non-cash expense, but it takes a bite out of your earnings to save you taxes effectively. We are lower than we were at this time last year. So that's another $11 million gain in our earnings versus last year. And then our borrowing fees, there's some forecast here, but we've gotten announcements on what was paid off and when. So I think we're $9 million better than last year in the same quarter because we've got lower debt now. Sorry, little frog in my throat. I'm trying to clear a little bit here. But year over year, saving $9 million there. So you can see, where are my numbers coming from? Where are my gains coming from? Why am I saying we're at such a higher earnings than last year? And by the way, I'm going to give you that bottom line in a minute. But let's also cover, not all changes are happy. There are some higher expenses. So this is something too I've gotten challenged on a little bit on X. So I'm just showing you where all the numbers come from and the level of detail we're looking at. That yes, I do forecast changes in expenses as well. So let's look at those. So film costs, I have the same percentage as last year. When there's more blockbusters, by the way, I've noticed we pay a higher percent of our ticket sales back to the studios. I think that makes sense. They're saying, they get to charge a premium for a really good movie. So Deadpool, Twisters, Beetlejuice probably. So there's been some really great Despicable Me 4, some really great larger movies. There is a chance that we're paying higher than the last couple of quarters. So I've just had that the same as the same quarter last year. Same percent film cost that we pay back to the studios. But you remember I said over here that we've got a much higher admissions for AMC. So you pay a percent of your admissions back to the studios. Well, so of this $48 million improvement, you'll note, you just do the math real quick. I've got us paying 50% back to the studios. So then that takes half of that back. So there's $24 million in increased expenses year over year on the film costs side. So I just want you to know, I'm not ignoring that. I count our expenses. I forecast those too into the bottom line. Same thing on food and beverage cost. We've had a pretty steady margin on food and beverages. I track, there's a line in the expense, in the income statement. There's an expense line in the income statement, and you can go see for yourself, quarter to quarter, how much are we paying in food and beverage expenses. So I've kept that percent the same as last year, but again, it's a percent on higher sales. So now that expense went up. So you can see I've got $37 million across just those two items on increased expenses, taking a bite out of our profits. Operating expenses. So, we've got some inflation, and then we've got some variable costs. I forecast that based on, a variety of things. But the fact that our business has been growing, and the fact that now, guys, we're running distribution, we're running popcorn, we're running candy, there are operating expenses to run business. That's just normal. So that's what this variable cost says. So I've actually got us at an all-time high during the retail era. Somebody asked me the other day, what do you mean by retail era? I just mean post-COVID, since the apes showed up. So sometimes I'll call that the ape era. Sometimes I'll call it post-COVID. Sometimes I'll call it the retail era. I mean the same thing. But I've got us at the highest operating expenses we've had this whole time. But what's great is as a percent of revenues, it's getting lower. That's what you want to see. So that's good. But just so you see, I've increased our operating expenses year over year by $14 million. I'm counting on those costs. So I don't think anybody can say I'm just being hype or too bullish. And then income tax, you can see a couple question marks here because that is a super wild guess I have to make. I don't know really what our effective tax rate is because we haven't had a consistent period of profits. I can go back and see, but you've got all kinds of things like carried in losses and deferred taxes and all sorts of accounting that are going to impact that. So I'm just telling you I'm probably going to be wildly wrong on this number. But I do have an $11 million gain in our taxes, meaning $11 million higher expense in our taxes year over year because we have more profits. You're going to pay taxes on that. So that is where all of my change comes from. And so bottom line, what I'm saying is I think we're going to have anywhere from $80 to $110 million at the bottom line of net earnings, profits. And I think that represents, you can see kind of basically a 67 to a $97 million gain year over year. Imagine what the shorts are going to have to say, and what the imposter apes who are trying to get you focused. I told you people would focus you on the rear view. They're keeping you focused on cash burn from the strike period. The strike is over, right? You saw that June we had all-time record EBITDA, and I showed you in one of these videos, and I showed you on Twitter, that June's box office was only the 16th best domestically. On the 16th best box office, we had an all-time record on EBITDA. That is all this stuff I just showed you. That is your management team improving the business. And so what are shorts going to say when we deliver, and this is a forecast. If I'm wrong, then, that could happen. But let's say I'm right for a minute, and we deliver 80 to $100 million on the bottom line. And notice this second bullet. Notice I put the question mark to kind of disclaim this a little bit, but I believe cash flows should be higher. I told you there's some expenses that are non-cash expenses. So have a feeling that cash flows will be even higher than this. So if we're, pushing towards 9 digits on earnings and way over 9 digits on cash flows, you can now see why I'm getting so bullish. That earnings call should be in early November, and I am really looking forward to it. We will see. I guess we'll find out how wrong or right I've been. But bottom line, even if I'm off by a lot, you know that it's profits this quarter and it's positive cash flows. So that's really fantastic. All right, I want to just talk about a couple last things, and then we're actually already done. A few things. So did you see over the weekend, the Labor Day weekend, these guys never rest, want to mess up your weekends. And so you had these large X or Twitter accounts. I don't even know how to pronounce their names, guys. Pasobieks. So it's two brothers. This FX Hedgers, Wall Street Silver, Libs of TikTok. You ought to be recognizing these. These are very, very large accounts. And all talked about basically FUD that Adam had to address. And it's just a lather, rinse, repeat. It's a repeat of last year when we had the Sound of Freedom movie. Now we had City of Dreams that was, shining a light on human trafficking, and in particular with children. So very noble. I reposted it. We ought to be shining light on oppression everywhere, and problems that we see, and trying to end that. It's evil. It's disgusting. And Adam came out and clarified AMC sold more tickets than any other theater in the whole world on this movie, right? And which is normal. We have the biggest market share. So you had these accounts who claimed, all kinds of wild conspiracies, that AMC managers were instructed to lie and say there's no seats and turn people away and not let them see the movie and all of this stuff. And it was pretty much provably false. So I was all over X jumping on these people. Adam came out, and I'm just highlighting it because I want you to keep seeing how you're manipulated, how there are, these guys were all retweeting each other, first of all. So large accounts all pumping each other, kind of a big circle that helps each other gain followers. And they don't really care if they're pumping fake news because it's clicks that pay them, right? You get paid here on YouTube, and you get paid on Twitter by clicks. And often I kind of lament that because I'll share these numbers with you guys and not get very many clicks. But I've promised myself, I've promised my wife that I would never be a clickbait channel. I just can't do that. But these guys do. And so they were sharing fake news attacking AMC. And the reason I want to bring that up is, it's just important to be aware because, again, if they're getting paid on clicks, what's stopping you from muting, blocking, saying, I don't want to see these people sharing all this fake stuff? And then, frankly, these are very loud political voices. So if they're sharing fake news about AMC, whose side are they on? And what exactly is their intent when they're sharing political stuff? So I'm just out. I'm out on them. I was very vocal about it. That is something we fight, is manipulation and fake news. Speaking of manipulators, you will continue to see, and if you're following me on X, you already know what I'm talking about. I'm going to downplay this a little bit in this video because I've said enough. But there are networks, there are connections. You're going to see, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's been the journey of my 4 years. I went from being very, very trusting and just sort of taking people at face value to seeing how many manipulators and how many networks there are. And it makes sense, right? What are we fighting? We're fighting corruption at the highest levels in the richest and most powerful circles. I always say, if you think the very, very rich and very, very powerful don't want to stay very, very rich and very, very powerful, then you're fooling yourself. And so then all you have to do is ask yourself, okay, what would be the logical steps they would take to stay rich and powerful? Well, one of those is to have networks of influencers to make sure that people in retail don't ever really understand what's going on. Misinformation, short and distort, pretending to be your friend, spreading negativity. I've got a whole video on their tactics. You can go find that from, I want to say, March or April. Just go look for something about shill networks. And so, there are people who kind of, when I get real vocal, in fact, let me just explain a little bit. If you go back a little ways, there was an account, I don't know, 5 weeks ago or something, maybe 6 weeks ago, who said, well, it's time to start thinking about whether someday we got to boot Adam out and replace him if he doesn't do what we want. And that was right on the heels of these all-time record profits for June. And so I was pretty loud about that is ridiculous. Let me show you how well this management team is doing, and let me show you with numbers so you don't have to take my word for it. All right, that was that whole thing. As soon as I did that, I started getting attacked both privately and publicly at a much higher level than I had for a very long time. One of my skills is I spot patterns, and so I noticed the uptick right away. And that's kind of stating the obvious. You're going to notice if suddenly in your DMs you're getting all kinds of nasty grams, and on all your posts you're getting all kinds of nasty grams. That's just going to stand out to you. And one of the things that I just do, and I'm telling the shorts the playbook, so they'll fix this at some point, and it'll make it harder. But I'll just tell you guys so you can see what happens. I check their followers. Someone attacks me. All right, let me see who you're with. And over and over and over and over and over, and I'm talking about 60 accounts by now. For the last month, I'm not kidding, 60 plus accounts that have attacked me, said negative things, tried to sway sentiment, laid traps for me, all have followed, in particular, one person. But it's actually a group. There's about 5 or 6 people, and I have all the screenshots, right? I just take all these screenshots, I kind of collect the information so that I can spot the pattern over time. And so the last few days, something happened that I had been mostly quiet about it, and something happened that I was like, I just can't be quiet about this anymore. I'm just going to tell people what I've seen. And so that stirred up a lot of, noise. And that noise, what happens is people come to me, some well-meaning even, why are you causing drama? Why are you doing this? You must love attention. What's going on? Why do you have to do this? And I'll just tell you, while I can respect the response of, can't we all just get along? There's a desire for that. People don't like conflict. And by the way, you shouldn't. Conflict is gross. I don't like conflict. But, I tell friends, there's this idea in peacemaking that if someone is being bullied or lied to or manipulated or oppressed, being quiet is not peace for that person. And so I see all of us being lied to, manipulated, oppressed, bullied, and I'm not going to be quiet. That is not causing the problem. The person who raises their voice and says, hey, there's a problem, be really careful that that's not the person you attack. That's the whistleblower, right? That is the person who says, hey, guys, I noticed this. We got to deal with this. So, if you are in the camp that believes I'm stirring up drama, then okay, I can't change your mind on that. But I'm just telling you where I come from, that if I see that the AMC community is being manipulated, lied to, abused, taken advantage of, I'm just never going to be quiet. And so the people who tell me to be quiet, I got told the same thing when I stood up to Tara and Cohodes. And then it turned out, he's a billionaire short who was trying to weasel his way into the community and manipulate our way into, we would have lost. You wanted us to tokenize all of AMC. And now, by now, you understand everything with FTX and all of that. And so, in hindsight, you'd look back and say, man, I'm really glad that retail stood up to Terra and cohorts. At the time, guys, I got attacked relentlessly. Why are you stirring up drama? Why are you creating division? Why can't you be quiet? The same thing has happened multiple times since. And, the day that I get it wrong, I will apologize. But so far, every time I've decided to speak up, it's been a slow burn where I see something for months sometimes before I ever say it out loud. So I just hope you could, even if you disagree, that you could at least understand, why I'm doing that. A couple other things I just want to acknowledge that I've seen out there. The Morningstar thing, all the shares. I keep getting asked about that. So if you are not on X, you might not have seen Morningstar reported this, Northern Trust ETF that basically showed billions upon billions. It's like 15 billion shares. I think it was like 15.149 or something. Shares of AMC. Similar with GameStop, there were billions of shares. But here's why I did not post about it and I didn't make a video about it. Told you I won't be clickbait. I also saw right away that Northern Trust had the same, let's call it glitch, and I'm kind of using air quotes because how many glitches have we seen on AMC and GameStop, right? So, I understand the notion that, there's so many glitches, sometimes it's not a glitch, it's more a signal of fraud and market manipulation. I understand that response, and I often have that. This time, the reason I didn't is I also saw that glitch on stocks like Dell. So it wasn't just like heavily shorted meme type stocks. It was just basically everything that Northern Trust owned. They showed this weird glitch. Not to mention for AMC, I forgot, but it would have been something like $42 billion of AMC they would have owned. I don't think they even have all that much assets under management if you go back and look at that. So there were just a lot about it that actually kind of spoke to me. Again, you're welcome to disagree, but it spoke to me of, hey, I think this is actually truly a data glitch when it's across all of the tickers that they own. It wasn't, people were posting AMC and posting GameStop, but a lot of them weren't telling you, yeah, that glitch was in stocks like Dell too. And so that's why I haven't been all that vocal about that. You can go to Adam's tweet. He said, hey, they went to Morningstar and got it corrected. So you can kind of see about that. And then just something fun before I kind of wrap up here. Maybe you'd seen on X that the other day I had just sort of seen a decode of something from DFV. I call him Kitty. Stronger together. And so you would have seen I posted stronger together. And it was just kind of fun. Yesterday, there's a version of decode from Adam's tweet where you can see he was in a way saying stronger together also. I'm not claiming for sure that that's real or true. I don't like when decoders, claim there's no possible way they could be wrong. But I am telling you it was there. There's a version of it. You can see my X post. And so I like this idea of stronger together, whether that's just in the AMC community, whether that's AMC and GameStop, whether that's all of retail, whether you think about across political ideologies that we can be stronger together, whatever you want to take from that. So that was just kind of fun to see that perhaps Adam had picked up on that and was sharing that too. Just see my X post about that if you want. And then the point that I always say, credibility meets integrity. Don't follow anybody on financial stuff. And I would even say now political stuff if there's any kind of flaw in their credibility or their integrity. And that's what you saw with these big accounts with the fake news. So they've shown a lack of integrity. So why would you still follow them? People are trying to influence your life and get to your wallet. And finances in particular is an area where there is just way too much temptation for people to lack integrity and to use you, abuse you, manipulate you, and take from you. And so that is what we fight, and that is why I will never be quiet. So I just implore you over and over, look for people who have both. It can't just be one, credibility and integrity. That matters. That doesn't mean you always have to agree with them. There's plenty of people, I know because you all tell me, who disagree with a lot of things that I say. And I'm saying that with a smile, that's fine. To me, it's if you keep it respectful, then I can ride with you. It's the people who are toxic who I won't ride with, because that's a flaw. That's actually an integrity issue too. If you can't treat people with basic respect, I'm never going to trust you or ride with you, because it tells me there's a problem with your ability to care about what's happening to others. And if you can't care about what's happening to others, then am I going to expect you to care about what happens in my wallet? So just credibility and integrity matter. And ultimately, you guys know we will win. So let's go.